All right, from the top. Pre-service teachers, a study of self-theories of intelligence and attitudes about Web 2.0. Next slide. The picture represents the role of education on my life. The river is education, and I am the landscape. I have been continually influenced and changed by the river. Education, from the perspectives of a student, a teacher, and now a learner, has been a constant in my life. Next slide. In this analogy, teachers are beavers, nature's supreme engineers. Teachers are able to transform the lives of others like beavers that change the path of a river to improve the well-being of the landscape. I was drawn to this research with future teachers since, like beavers, teachers are often taken for granted and their positive impact in the lives of students is overlooked or misunderstood. Next slide. If we partially believe the claims of Bill Gates or Tony Wagner, one problem we face in the United States is the lack of preparation of our youth to be productive members in the 21st century. In Wagner's book, The Global Achievement Gap, he described a gap in the skills students need for careers, college, and to be global citizens, and the skills students are taught and tested on in school. Working under the assumption that Wagner is correct, then teachers play an essential role in better preparing students for life after they graduate from high school. Wagner calls for skills like collaboration across networks and assessing and analyzing information. These skills are increasingly dependent upon Web 2.0 or social media technologies. Next slide. So the problem that I'm interested in is how can teacher-educator programs better prepare future teachers to use and to integrate technology to promote student-centered learning, essentially to promote 21st century skills. If the problem is a population of students unprepared in 21st century skills, click the slide, teachers might be one solution. Teachers can engineer students' successful transition into their college or professional careers. Next slide. In this research, I wanted to know if there was a correlation between future teachers' thoughts about intelligence, in other words, mindsets, and their attitudes about Web 2.0. I was also curious about the attitudes towards technology by different categories of pre-service teachers. For example, do men and women have different perceptions about technology? Are future science teachers more likely to embrace technology than English teachers? Next slide. To examine the grass, I could look directly at the grass blades, wipe off the dew, measure the length and the mass of the blades. Or I could use those dewdrops to gain a different perspective on the blades of grass. By looking in the dewdrops, I can still indirectly measure the blades of grass. In the research I'm discussing with you today, I used a dewdrop approach. I used two survey instruments in a slightly unusual manner for the instruments. These tools are called the Mindset and Technology Acceptance Surveys. Next slide. We're looking at a slide that has mindsets and Carol Dweck on it. Okay. I'm fascinated by Carol Dweck's work. She combines developmental psychology, social psychology, and cognitive psychology. She goes between the worlds of psychology and education, as well as theory and practice, in meaningful ways for researchers and teachers. At its core, slide, her research is about the beliefs that organize people's worlds and gives meaning to their experiences. The mindset terminology, if we look at the picture of the brain, the one on the left, that represents a fixed mindset, and the hemisphere on the right represents a growth mindset. Next slide. The picture of this brick wall represents a fixed mindset. For those who have a fixed mindset, they believe intelligence is fixed. It is a fixed trait within a person, and it cannot be changed. The internal dialogue that goes on inside a person's mind with a fixed mindset, it's a judgmental dialogue. It's a winner or loser, smart or dumb. Slide or spacebar. The other end of the spectrum is the growth mindset. People with a growth mindset perceive intelligence as a trait that can be cultivated through learning by increasing effort and improving strategies. The internal dialogue of a growth mindset person believes in a win-win attitude. They believe that things are so that they can learn and positive actions can improve outcomes. When a growth mindset person faces a challenge, they perceive it as an opportunity to grow and to learn. In reality, spacebar, and spacebar again, most of us are like the picture with the stone fence and the trees and the land growing. We exhibit fixed and growth mindsets at different times and different scenarios. Next slide. Mindset research has shown to influence perceptions and actions in areas like achievement goals, confidence, effort, motivation, praise, self-esteem, and stereotypes. The mindset model has been used in various educational levels and situations. It's been controlled for factors like culture and size and types of organization. Next slide. The technology acceptance model is a theoretical model that predicts how a user accepts and uses technology. Next slide. The TAM, or Technology Acceptance Model, was created by Fred Davis. He is in informational systems. Okay? So in general, the literature on the TAM does not draw direct lines into education. However, the primary exception to this is the work of Timothy Teo, whose version of the TAM I've used and adapted within this study. He's done a tremendous amount of work looking at pre-service teachers and their attitudes about technology. Next slide. The core concepts of the TAM are the perceived usefulness and the perceived ease of use. These two core constructs depend on external variables. Okay. Next slide. Like the mindset model, the TAM has been used in a variety of ways. It's a robust model. It's been used with different technologies, different controlling factors, all kinds of subjects, and in different fields. Next slide. Okay. Before we start thinking about mindsets and attitudes about Web 2.0, let's go back to the beavers. For generations, beavers were considered a problem. It's only in the past 20 years or so that lay people are starting to recognize the value of beavers in positively shaping the landscape. Once upon a time, we used to count the dams, we would use the beavers for their pelts, but now scientists have started measuring the depth of beaver ponds, the clarity of the water. By looking at the influence of beavers from different perspectives, they are now known to be a positive influence on the environment. So back to this slide, which is about the why study mindsets and attitudes about Web 2.0. I'm hopeful that by looking at mindsets and attitudes about technology, that we might find a way to interpret teachers as solutions to the problem rather than being the problem of why students aren't prepared for the 21st century. Next slide. So the two research questions that I specifically addressed, the first one was a correlational question. And the second one had to do with the differences within future teachers. The very first assumption, though, that I made with these research questions or before these research questions, assumption number one, people are people. Regardless of our professions or our jobs, people are people. So when preparing and thinking about what would happen in research question number one, I predicted that pre-service teachers will cover the mindset spectrum and that the pre-service teachers with a growth mindset would be most likely to embrace technology in comparison with fixed mindset people. And then number two, what did I expect? I expected that no, there was not going to be a significant difference between demographic groups. Back to assumption number one, people are people. And then I assumed that the attitudes about technology would be essentially equally dispersed among those different groups. Next slide. So the participants in our study. Traditional students are those 24 years old and younger. Adult learners are defined as 25 years and above. The breakdown of gender was 75 and 25% female to male. Overwhelmingly, our participants were white, and they were divided up into 3 certification areas: elementary ed, humanities, and STEM. In summary, the participants of this survey were young, white females spread across 3 certification areas. Okay, next slide. Excuse me. Okay. So the survey instruments used to examine the correlation were the mindset and the TAM. The mindset survey has 8 items, and then within the data we collected, the Cronbach's alpha was 0.91. The TAM has 15 items and 4 subscales. The subscales we used were attitude toward usage, perceived ease of use, perceived usefulness, and technological complexity. The Cronbach's alpha for our study was 0.89. Next slide. Results. So once again, the main assumption by me was that people are people. Well, assumption number one did not prove to be exactly true. Okay? So we found out that when we correlated the mindset with the TAM, or the attitudes about technology, that there was, so the good news, yes, it is statistically significant. Not bad news, but the other news is that the R value is super low. So we have statistical significance with a low R value. And the reason that occurred was that teachers did not have mindsets spread out across the spectrum from fixed to growth. They tended to cluster over on the growth mindset side, which once again is good news. So the assumption that people are people, maybe it may still be true, but within teachers, they tend to have growth mindsets. Okay, next slide. Question 2 asked, are there significant differences between certification area, the age groups, and the gender of people? Next slide. When we looked at certification area, there's something going on. The p-value of the 0.06, that's marginally significant. And so it tells us, the ANOVA told us that in there somewhere between elementary ed, humanities, and STEM, there's a difference in 2 of those groups somewhere. Okay, so then to figure out which 2 groups, next slide, we do a 2K honest significance difference. Interestingly, it was the elementary ed teachers had a higher or a more positive attitude about technology than the STEM pre-service teachers. Next slide. With respect to gender, there was one scale was statistically significant, and that's the attitudes toward usage, where the females had a more positive attitude about using technology than the males. Next slide. And by age group, it turned out that the adult learners, those 25 years old and older, perceived technology as being more useful than traditional learners. Next slide. So the overall findings of this study is essentially do not use the mindset and TAM instruments in a correlational study. Okay. Another finding was that although there were statistically significant findings in the subscales of the TAM for each demographic group, overall the technology attitudes of pre-service teachers, they're more alike than different. Next slide. So what is the practical significance of the study? Well, one, in spite of my many searches, I could not find where there were any correlational studies between the mindset and TAM instruments, and now I know why. So I can report with confidence that there are better use of the instruments than using them in a correlational study of the mindset and TAM instruments. And then another practical significance is we need, as teacher educators, we need to question our assumptions about our future teachers, and that many of the traditional stereotypes are not supported in this study. Next slide. There were limitations to this study. I used humans. So, of course, there was, related to the humans, we were using pre-service teachers and having them to predict what they thought their attitudes would be as in-service teachers. There's the whole concept of how, in theory, how they think things will be, and then the reality of once they're in the classrooms. And the motivation of pre-service teachers to use technology and the motivation of in-service teachers may change. Due to the common method variance and the social desirability bias, surveys often give inaccurate, inflated estimates. And then the surveys give a limited perspective on whatever we're looking at. It's a very limited and somewhat skewed view of the world. Next slide. Future directions for this research. Although I did not find in this research how teachers or beavers are part of the solution yet, I do believe that possibly using a mixed methods approach could provide that insight. And then also a longitudinal study. What happens to the mindsets of teachers from when they leave the university and they go into the work world? So I look forward to continuing this research and trying to see how and why our perceptions are. Like, why is it that some of us believe that yes, all children can learn, and then others believe, well, all children can learn to a certain degree. Okay, next slide. So other slides that I anticipate needing, and I wanted your input on how to do it, was references and the thank you slide.